Hello everyone. It's great to see you again in today's video. In a remote mountainous region of northern Vietnam, Diep and Pao lived happily in a small house with Pao's parents. Their life was simple but full of love, and they supported each other through every hardship. However, after 5 years of marriage without a child, cracks began to form in their once happy union. Pao grew distant, and the warmth between them slowly faded. One day, while Diep was still working in the fields, Pao brought home a mysterious woman. Her name was Linh Dan, and she was visibly pregnant. Without hesitation, Pao's parents welcomed her with open arms, overjoyed at the thought of having a grandchild. No one questioned the father of the child. Instead, they eagerly planned a wedding, determined to make Linh Dan Pao's second wife. Diep, unaware of what was unfolding, still believed in Pao's love. But she had no idea that a storm was brewing at home, one that would change her fate forever. That afternoon, Diep was still diligently working in the fields, her heart at ease as she thought about the home she had nurtured for years. But suddenly, a neighbor rushed over, breathless and anxious, bringing shocking news. Pao had brought another woman home and was planning to marry her because she was pregnant. The words struck like lightning. Diep froze, her heart tightening with pain. Without hesitation, she ran back home. But as she reached the gate, the sound of cheerful voices inside made her stop in her tracks. Stepping inside, she was met with the most heartbreaking sight: Linh Dan, a stranger, standing in the middle of the house with a swollen belly. Beside her was Pao and his parents, their faces filled with joy. Diep's voice trembled. "What is this?" Silence fell over the room. Everyone turned to look at her, as if they had forgotten she even existed. Pao averted his gaze, while his mother simply smiled and pulled Linh Dan closer. "We just want a grandchild, my dear. Linh Dan is a good girl, and she's carrying our family's bloodline." Diep let out a bitter laugh. "And what about me? What am I to this family?" No one answered. Pao remained silent, while Linh Dan gently placed a hand on her belly, as if to stake her claim. At last, Pao sighed and spoke in a detached voice. "I'm sorry, but I can't let this child be born without a proper place in the family." Diep staggered back. She looked at the man she once trusted, the family she had devoted herself to, but all she saw now was betrayal and an overwhelming loneliness. That morning, the sky was clear and bright, but Diep's heart felt heavy, like a storm brewing inside her. She quietly worked in the garden, her hands tending the soil, but her soul felt empty. Suddenly, her mother-in-law's voice rang out from the house. "Diep, go to the chicken coop, catch a rooster, and clean it for Linh Dan. She's been feeling weak and needs nourishment." Diep bit her lip, clenched her hands, but still nodded silently and walked to the coop. Linh Dan was tired? What about her? She had worked tirelessly for this family, yet not once had her mother-in-law cooked a warm bowl of soup for her. She finished preparing the chicken stew, carefully cooking the meal for the whole family. The rich aroma filled the air, but it wasn't meant for her. When she was about to take a bowl and join them at the table, her mother-in-law shot her a cold look. "You're done cooking? Then go back to the garden and work. Don't stand there expecting to eat with us." Diep froze. Her father-in-law, Pao, Linh Dan, no one spoke up for her. Swallowing the bitterness, she turned away, walking into the scorching sun, gripping her hoe while silent tears rolled down her face. Only after the family finished eating did she dare sneak into the kitchen. On the table, all that remained were scraps, some wilted vegetables, cold broth, and a few grains of rice. She sat down, quietly picking up what was left, eating while tears streamed down her face. She once sat at the same table, once picked the best pieces of food for Pao, once laughed with the family. Now, she was nothing more than a servant scavenging for leftovers. But even so, she endured. She swallowed her pride, her pain, just to have a place to call home. Yet, fate had more cruelty in store. As she was washing the dishes, a sudden scream pierced the air. "AAA! Help me!" Diep turned sharply. Linh Dan had collapsed, clutching her belly, face contorted in pain. Everyone rushed in. Her mother-in-law screamed in panic. "My grandchild! Diep, what have you done to her?" Diep's heart pounded as she shook her head desperately. I didn't do anything. I was just washing the dishes." But Lindan, her voice weak yet filled with venom, sobbed. She pushed me. I was just walking past, and she shoved me down. She wants to kill my baby. Diep's face turned pale. She shook her head furiously, tears falling uncontrollably. No. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't do it. But no one listened. Not her mother-in-law. Not even Pao. Her mother-in-law grabbed her arm, dragging her outside in rage. You wicked woman. I won't let you stay in this house another second. Diep fell to her knees, clutching her mother-in-law's legs, sobbing. Mother! Please, I didn't do it. Please don't throw me out, I have nowhere to go. But no one showed her mercy. Pao, her husband, the man she had loved with all her heart, stood silently, refusing to meet her eyes. Lindan, lying on the bed, had a flicker of triumph in her gaze. A smirk barely curved her lips. Her mother-in-law yanked her away, shouting, Get out of my house. A barren woman who dares to harm my grandchild, I never want to see you again. Diep sobbed, begged, but their hearts had turned to stone. Pao turned away. Her mother-in-law slammed the door shut. She was cast out. With nothing. No money, no home, no place to go. Darkness slowly swallowed the world, the night wind freezing against her skin, but it wasn't as cold as her heart. She stood before the door that had once been her home. Now, it was shut forever. But the most painful part? The man she loved the most never once tried to stop her. James, the ambitious homecoming. James, a sharp, fearless, and ambitious young CEO. After years of building his empire in real estate, restaurants, and ecotourism projects across multiple countries, he decided to return to Vietnam. This time, he wasn't looking to expand abroad, he wanted to establish a legacy on the land where he was born. His vision was clear, to develop a high-end ecotourism resort that would harness the natural beauty of the region. The next morning, James arrived at the local government office, dressed in a simple yet elegant suit. With firm determination, he placed a stack of documents on the table. Hello, I'm James. I want to invest in an ecotourism project here. I need to complete the legal procedures. The official glanced at him with a mix of curiosity and professionalism, flipping through the documents. As James sat patiently, he envisioned the future, a lush green resort, streams of tourists arriving, and a grand project coming to life. He believed this was the start of something great. But he had no idea that this land held more than just potential, it had surprises he had never imagined. Diep, left with nothing, nowhere to go. Diep was cast out of her husband's house with nothing, no money, no assets, no place to go. She stepped through the gate for the last time, carrying only humiliation and heartbreak. Walking along the village road, she felt lost. Everything around her, the fields, the bamboo groves, the familiar dirt path, remained unchanged, yet she no longer belonged anywhere. As the evening fell, the air grew colder. The wind tangled through her unkempt hair, carrying away the silent sobs she couldn't utter. She had once believed that no matter what happened, she would always have a home to return to. But now, she had nothing. Exhausted, she stopped at an empty patch of land far from the village, secluded and forgotten. She picked up dry bamboo sticks, stripped some banana leaves, and tied them together to build a makeshift shelter. As the night deepened, the wind grew harsher. She curled up in the darkness, holding herself tightly. Looking up at the vast night sky, she whispered to herself, "What do I have left? How will I survive?" There was no answer. Only the cold silence of the night. James, a light in the darkness. In the distance, the headlights of a car cut through the empty road, slowly approaching the fragile shelter by the roadside. James sat inside, drained from a long day of meetings and negotiations. He leaned back, eyes drifting out of the window, ready to head straight to his hotel. But then, his gaze sharpened. A small figure sat huddled beneath the flimsy shelter. His car slowed to a stop. He stepped out, walking toward her, each step measured but firm. As he got closer, he saw how frail she was, her clothes were tattered, her body thin, her hair disheveled. But what struck him most was her eyes, void of life, as if all meaning had been drained from them. He held her gaze for a long moment before speaking in a calm, steady voice. "You can't stay here. It's going to rain soon. Come with me." Diep flinched, looking up at him with weary, red-rimmed eyes. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care. She had long stopped believing in kindness. "I don't need anyone's pity. Leave me alone." Her voice was weak but resolute. James studied her for a moment, something unreadable flickering in his expression. He didn't argue. Silently, he removed his thick coat, placing it beside her along with a bag of food. "You don't have to trust me. But at least, let yourself survive." Then, without another word, he turned and walked back to his car. James, a stirring within. As his car moved down the empty road, James couldn't shake the image of the woman curled up beneath the flimsy shelter. He wasn't the type to be easily moved. But something about her lingered in his mind. What had happened to her? How had she ended up like this? Tonight, he had a luxurious hotel room waiting for him. She had nothing but a fragile shelter under the cold sky. Outside, the wind howled stronger, signaling an impending storm. And within James, something was stirring, something he couldn't quite name. The emptiness left behind after Diep's departure. Since the day Diep left, her husband's family had fallen into disarray. The once warm family meals were now cold and quiet, filled with nothing but silence and fatigue. The lush fields and gardens, once flourishing under her diligent hands, were now overgrown with weeds, abandoned without care. Her in-laws, who had long relied on her to manage everything, now felt the weight of her absence. Life had become far more difficult, and only now did they realize that the daughter-in-law they had once overlooked was, in fact, the backbone that kept the household running smoothly. As for Pao, he was beginning to feel the strain as well. He had once believed that Lin Dan, his second wife, would bring him happiness, a fresh start, and the love he thought he deserved. But in the end, she turned out to be nothing more than a woman who complained endlessly, unable to support him in any way. The burdens of life piled onto Pao's shoulders, and as the days passed, his patience wore thin. And Lin Dan? She, too, had grown tired of Pao. The man she once admired had now become a broken figure, drowning himself in alcohol, aimless and unmotivated. Gone were the sweet words, the excitement, and the passionate moments. Dissatisfied with the reality she had chosen, she turned to someone else, a man who could offer her the luxuries and attention Pao could no longer provide. Everything was crumbling. And perhaps, only after losing everything, would Pao finally understand what truly mattered in his life. But by then, would it be too late? After days of wandering with nowhere to go, Diep went to the local police station, hoping to seek justice. With tear-stained eyes and a trembling voice, she pleaded. "My husband threw me out with nothing. I just want to claim what rightfully belongs to me." The officer listened attentively before asking, "Do you have a marriage certificate?" Diep froze. Her marriage to Pao had only been recognized by village customs, without any legal documentation. Her voice wavered. "I lived with him for 5 years, taking care of the house, the fields, and his family. But without official paperwork or witnesses, she had no legal claim to any assets." The officer sighed, then decided to accompany her to Pao's house, hoping for a peaceful resolution. At the house, Pao and his family were already prepared for confrontation. His mother sneered. "Why have you come back to cause trouble?" Diep swallowed her pain, speaking calmly. "I don't want charity. I just want what I deserve." Pao crossed his arms, his voice cold and indifferent. "No marriage certificate, no proof. You have no rights here." The officer hesitated before delivering the final verdict. "Without legal documentation, we can't help you reclaim any assets." The words struck like a cruel sentence. Diep had lost everything. Her mother-in-law smirked, waving her off. "Get out. Don't even dream of taking anything from this house." Pao stood there, emotionless. Inside, Lin Dan, now heavily pregnant, watched with victorious eyes. With no choice left, Diep turned away, her steps heavy with grief. Her figure faded into the distance, alone, lost, and without a place to call home. She had truly lost everything.
Bài thơ đồng chí. Quê hương anh nước mặn đồng chua, làng tôi nghèo đất cải nên sỏi đá. Anh với tôi đôi người xa lạ, tự phương trời chẳng hẹn quen nhau. Súng bên súng đầu sát bên đầu, đêm rét chung chăn thành đôi chi kỷ. Đồng chí, ruộng nương anh gửi bạn thân cải, gian nhà không mặc kệ gió lung lay. Giếng nước gốc đa nhớ người ra nính, anh với tôi biết từng cơn ớn lạnh. Sốt run người vầng trán ướt mồ hôi, áo anh rách vai, quần tôi có vài mảnh vá. Miệng cười buốt giá, chân không giày, thương nhau tay nắm lấy bàn tay. Đêm nay rừng hoang sương muối, đứng cạnh bên nhau chờ giặc tới, đầu súng trong treo. Bài thơ đồng chí được sáng tác vào đầu năm 1948, sau khi tác giả đã cùng đồng đội tham gia vào chiến đấu trong chiến dịch Việt Bắc Thu Đông năm 1947, đánh bại cuộc tổng tiến công quy mô lớn của giặc Pháp lên chiến khu Việt Bắc. Bài thơ là một trong những tác phẩm tiêu biểu nhất về người lính cách mạng và văn học kháng chiến chống Pháp từ năm 1946 đến năm 1954.